Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, counselors, staff, presenters, the press, and online viewers. It's 7 o'clock, so this is when we'll be starting our information session. And we begin tonight's meeting with the acknowledgement that the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, specifically Mississauga. We would also like to acknowledge the North Channel Métis Council. We say miigwech to thank Indigenous people for taking care of this land from time immemorial. We are called to treat this land, its plants, animals, stories, and its people with honor and respect. Council has requested a number of speakers for tonight's session who will not only enlighten you, but will also provide you, our audience, with information to share with others. For those who are not able to listen to tonight's presentation, please direct them to the town website, as this session is being recorded and can be accessed as early as tomorrow. Our first presenter is Karen Bittner, Director of Facilities and Community Services. Karen is going to share some exciting information now, and then she's going to keep you in suspense as she has more news to share at the end of tonight's presentation. Welcome, Karen.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Mayor Hagman. Greetings from day 8 in prison at home. So I hope to be free by the weekend. Bear with me. I'm just going to click on my share screen, and I've got a couple of recaps because this summer a lot of really incredible things happened, and it's easy to get caught up in the noise in the media. But there was a lot of hardworking volunteers this year, and we were successful with a really incredible grant. So just bear with me while I click play. And here we go. Enjoy. And I have one more for you, and that one was especially impactful. So not only did the Blue Jays choose to invest in Blind River, but it hit a lot of accessibility targets for us as a department. And as you can see, we called in Brody to do our product testing. And Brody shared with us the areas that we need to improve. So it's a great example of how we can include our youth and make sure our spaces are inclusive and welcoming, and engage our kids. Let them tell us how we can do better. So show number 2. Thank you. So those are just a couple of examples. We're going to be doing a deeper dive later on in this presentation, but it's a nice warm up to get everybody's hearts in the right place too, because the reason you logged on tonight is you care about your community. And those 2 presentations are filled with people that also care about this community. So I cannot wait to share more good news with you later on. And I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor Hagman.
Thanks so much, Karen. And I threw my first ball to the gentleman, and it was very exciting, just the fact that it actually went over the plate. So thank you for that. Christy Harper, Manager of Community Wellness and Chief Nursing Officer, along with Amanda Perry, epidemiologist, and Allison McFarland, public health nurse, are on the front lines dealing with the opioid crisis in Algoma. Please welcome Christy, Amanda, and Allison from Algoma Public Health as they give us information on the perfect storm.
Thank you very much for that introduction, and good evening, everyone. I'm just going to take an opportunity to introduce the 2 colleagues that are with me. Allison McFarland, she's a public health nurse with Algoma Public Health, and she's been with us working in the substance use portfolio for 5 years now. And Amanda Perry is our epidemiologist at Algoma Public Health. She's been with us for, I guess, going on 6 to 8 months now. She's new, but she's jumped right into the opioid response and the data, and we were happy to share that information with you this evening. So just to get started, the presentation is going to review the current opioid crisis, Algoma Public Health and our community partners work to address the opioid crisis. And it's going to highlight some opportunities for continuing to address the opioid crisis as we move forward. I'm now going to share my screen. All right, here we go. So to get started, the presentation is going to cover a brief overview of the opioid crisis as it's situated within the core functions of public health, as well as the Ontario Public Health Standards. We're going to review our local situation and the data, discuss the connections between substance use and the COVID-19 pandemic, and the strategies and the work of APH and our community partners in this area. And we're also going to outline some of the considerations and next steps for the future of our opioid related work. So our public health work is really based on a few core functions that are highlighted here. Health surveillance and population health assessment. So this is where we really monitor the health data and the trends in order to describe the local situation. From here, it helps us understand what's happening in our local communities so that we can develop policies and programs and services to address those local needs. We also focus in on health promotion. So that's preventing disease, encouraging safe behaviors, and improving health through various ways, such as policy development, community programs and services. And in this area, we are also really focusing on raising awareness and ongoing efforts to reduce stigma associated with substance use. And we really work with our community partners to identify gaps in order to address those identified needs. We also focus in on disease and injury prevention. So this includes activities to promote safe and healthy lifestyles that reduce harms and prevent illness. So for example, we provide naloxone to prevent opioid-related deaths. A bit about the Ontario Public Health Standards. So in addition to those core functions that we just reviewed, the Ontario Public Health Standards really identify the broad mandate for public health and local boards of health to improve health and health equity. As outlined in the Substance Use and Injury Prevention Program Standard, this is where we work to reduce the burden of substance use in communities and increase public awareness of the risk factors associated with substance use. We also increase awareness of the benefits and access to harm reduction programs and meaningfully engage with community partners to plan, implement, and evaluate various programs and services. In addition to the Ontario Public Health Standards, we also have a substance use and harm reduction guideline. So this guideline really provides additional information on the roles and responsibilities of public health. It helps to identify a common understanding of substance use, and it also outlines approaches for developing certain public health interventions. One of the main focuses within this guideline is really working with local community partners. And our community wellness team at Ogama Public Health has been, coordinating our efforts with many partners. And throughout this pandemic, we've really prioritized work in this area to continue to provide the local services that our clients and communities need. And throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, we've noted an increase in the needs for this ongoing work. We are seeing an increase in our harm reduction services, the number of partners who have reached out to extend outreach efforts and services, and we have more recently come together with our Northern Health Unit partners to really look at this issue from a Northern lens to identify what might be applicable to Northern rural communities and how we can work together collaboratively. So more details about the increased needs and demands of this work is going to be shared throughout the next sections of the presentation. And at this point, I am going to hand over the presentation to Amanda, who is going to speak in more detail about the local data and our current opioid situation.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Christy. So my name is Amanda Perry, and my role as an epidemiologist overall is to study and understand the distribution and determinants of health-related events and diseases in a population. So simply what that just means is when we're talking about distribution, that's just looking at the frequency and patterns of disease or health-related events like injuries. And then when I refer to determinants, that's just looking at the causes or the factors that may influence a disease or health-related event in a specified population. So this is really important, especially when we're investigating an outbreak, as well as identifying areas that are disproportionately burdened by disease or any other type of event. Another important role is the knowledge translation piece. So this is important because we want to make sure when we share findings with the public that our results are easily understandable by the public, and they're presented in a meaningful way. So specifically for the opioid portfolio, my focus is the ongoing surveillance of opioid-related harms. And this includes the regular monitoring of different data sources, collecting and analyzing data, as well as interpreting the findings. So I conduct weekly opioid surveillance reports, and these reports are completed and shared internally with our opioid response team. A monthly surveillance bulletin is also shared with our external partners. And in this bulletin, it includes a spotlight section where external partners are invited to provide an update, and their information can be shared with our stakeholders. The work also includes collaboration with the Northern Public Health Unit epidemiologists, as well as the epidemiologists from the coroner's office. And this has been ongoing to review the opioid trends prior to the pandemic, as well as during the pandemic, to illustrate the impacts of opioids specifically for the North. And lastly, the knowledge translation piece, and this includes communicating trends as well as the rates of opioid-related harms with the public. Next slide, please. So this slide looks at an overview of the opioid-related harms in the North. So the data is looking at comparing 3 indicators, which are at the top of the table, and this includes emergency department visits, hospitalizations, and deaths for 2019 and 2020 by region. So the regions include Algoma, the Northeast Local Health Integration Network, the Northern Public Health Unit, and this is an aggregate variable of the 7 Northern Public Health Units, and then lastly, Ontario overall. So the first trend that we can see is that there's an increase in opioid-related harms in 2020 compared to 2019. And this is across all regions and all indicators. When we're looking at Algoma specifically, Algoma's 2020 death rate was 3 times higher in 2020 compared to 2019. Compared to Ontario's death rate, Algoma's 2020 death rate was 2.7 times higher than Ontario. Also, Algoma's rates for opioid-related emergency department visits and hospitalizations were more than 2 times higher than Ontario's rates. For the Northern Public Health Units, for 2020, the rates for all 3 indicators were twice as high compared to the province overall. Next slide, please. Okay, so we'll now look at the opioid-related deaths, comparing rates prior to the pandemic and during the pandemic. So looking at these 2 cohorts, the pre-pandemic cohort consisted from March 16th of 2019 to March 15th of 2020, and this included 185 deaths. And then our pandemic cohort is from March 16th of 2020 to March 15th of 2021, and this cohort included 365 deaths. So when we look at the graph, these 7 public health units are on the y-axis, and the x-axis is the rate of opioid-related deaths, and that's per 100,000. The vertical dark blue line, this represents Ontario's opioid-related death rate for the pre-pandemic cohort. And then the light blue vertical line, this represents Ontario's opioid-related death rate for the pandemic cohort. The dark blue bars, that represents the pre-pandemic cohort, and then the light blue bars represent the pandemic cohort. So what we see is that the opioid-related death rate across all Northern Public Health Units, as well as Ontario, have increased in the pandemic cohort compared to the pre-pandemic cohort. All Northern Public Health Units have higher rates of opioid-related deaths compared to Ontario, and this is for both cohorts. The opioid-related death rates for 5 out of the 7 Northern Public Health Units were at least 2 times higher during the pandemic cohort compared to Ontario overall. When we look at the map on the left, so this map is a map of Ontario and it represents the opioid-related deaths for 2020. The map highlights the public health units and color coordinates using the legend with 5 percentiles for a range of rates. So basically, the darker the color, the higher the rate of opioid-related deaths per public health unit. And on the graph, it shows the 5 northern public health units in dark blue, indicating that they have the highest rates, with Northwestern and Temiskaming slightly lower rates. Next slide, please. So continuing to use the cohort data for the northern public health units, this graph illustrates the distribution of opioid-related deaths by age. So the blue bars represent the pre-pandemic cohort and the yellow bars represent the pandemic cohort. And we can see that the opioid-related death counts increased across all age categories in the pandemic cohort compared to the pre-pandemic cohort. And the age groups that are most affected are those ages 25 to 44, as opioid-related death counts increased by 88% in this group. And then secondly, those ages 45 to 64, and the number of opioid-related deaths doubled in this group. Next slide, please. So this graph is similar to the graph on the previous slide. However, now we break the data down by sex in addition to age categories. Again, here the blue bars represent the pre-pandemic cohort and the yellow bars represent the pandemic cohort. The opioid-related deaths by sex is fairly stable across both cohorts. And the ages for both males and females most at risk include ages 25 to 44 and 45 to 64. Next slide, please. So this graph looks at how resuscitation attempts and naloxone administration changed during the two cohorts. So the number of resuscitation attempts increased by 10% in the pandemic cohort compared to the pre-pandemic cohort. And this was when someone was present at the scene who could intervene. And then the number of naloxone kits administered increased by 16% in the pandemic cohort compared to the pre-pandemic cohort. And again, this was when someone was present at the scene and who could intervene. Next slide, please. So this slide presents a snapshot of opioid-related harms for Algoma. So from April 2020 to March 2021, there was a 96% increase in opioid-related deaths compared to the previous period. From January 2021 to August of 2021, a total of 56 suspected drug-related deaths were reported. In Algoma, fentanyl was found in 87% of opioid-related deaths in 2020. And this number is comparable to Ontario with 86% reported. And the number of naloxone kits dispensed from pharmacies, Algoma Public Health, and community agencies all increased in 2021 compared to 2020. I'll now pass it on to Allison, who will address the impacts of COVID-19 on the opioid crisis.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I'm very excited to be here and to be able to share some of the work that we're doing. So first, we're going to look at the connections between the COVID-19 pandemic and the opioid crisis. So the effects of COVID-19 and the measures taken to contain it, they've rippled across every aspect of society and magnified existing inequalities among marginalized populations, such as people who use drugs. Public health measures that were put in place to halt the rapid progression of COVID-19 had unintended negative impacts on people who use drugs. The pandemic has both overshadowed and exacerbated the opioid crisis. Disruptions in services were compounded by barriers to accessing these services that were already in place prior to the pandemic. And some of these barriers include stigma related towards mental health and addictions, disparities in service availability. For example, rural and remote communities don't necessarily have the same access to services that larger cities do. Poverty, unstable housing or homelessness, lack of education, adverse childhood experiences, access to healthcare, and food insecurity are all pre-existing barriers that were already in place. Next slide, please. So we're now going to look at some of the connections between the opioid crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic. So first, looking at physical distancing and isolation. As COVID-19 spread rapidly across the world, stay-at-home orders and isolation requirements were put in place. And these new requirements increased stress, anxiety, and depression. And studies have shown now that increased rates of drug and alcohol use were related to isolation and these stay-at-home orders. And for the average person, coping with isolation is hard. When you add a pre-existing mental health concern and or substance use disorder, and isolation becomes nearly impossible. And then next, looking at border and travel restrictions, border closures disrupted illicit drug supply chains. And this would cause a drastic decrease in the availability to someone's usual supply. Because people who use drugs may have had to turn to another source, this increased risk for opioid-related harms, including death, as the strength and potency of the drug became more and more unfamiliar. These travel restrictions also increased harmful use patterns, such as switching to injection use or using more than normal. And lastly, looking at changes to employment and or income. In 2020, approximately 5 million Canadians lost their jobs due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And this disruption in routine and or regular schedules had drastic impacts on stress and anxiety levels. Poor coping skills can lead to increased substance use or reuse of substances for those who are in recovery. Again, patterns of drug use changed, for example, using more substances, changing what substance you are using. And again, this led to increased risks of opioid-related harms, including death. Next slide, please. So while the first year of the pandemic drew our APH staff away from their regular duties and focused more on COVID-19 response, our continuity of operations, or COOP plan, gave high priority to the programs that work to decrease health inequities for those who have been most affected by COVID. And again, for example, people who use substances. APH remained focused on maintaining programming that worked to prevent death and other harms that were related to substance use. And program delivery, we've maintained that, but we have modified it to accommodate all the COVID-19 pandemic measures. So now we're going to look at what we use in public health. We use the 4 pillars that are under the Canadian Drugs and Substance Use Strategy. That was a federal strategy. And to have a coordinated voice behind a community health issue, we need to look at systems as a whole beyond separate and isolated parts. So the Canadian Drug and Substance Use Strategy promotes a comprehensive, collaborative, compassionate, and evidence-based approach to addressing substance use-related harms. And in order to achieve this large-scale impact, we need formalized partnerships beyond the health sector, inter-organizational resourcing, and collaboration with communities, and that's all essential. So again, these 4 pillars are prevention, treatment, harm reduction, and enforcement, and they all have a foundational base of evidence-based practice. So if you can click 2 times, Christy. So our public health role is mainly focused in the prevention and harm reduction pillars. And while enforcement does not lie within public health, we know that well-balanced enforcement is part of a comprehensive community strategy. Algoma Public Health, along with our community partners, we are collaboratively working under each pillar to prevent and reduce substance use-related harms in our communities. And we, for example, are aligned to the Sault Ste. Marie area drug strategy, and the focus priorities under each of the 4 pillars. So the committee includes many community partners from various health and social service sectors who are working together to aim to improve the outcomes for those who use substances, their family members, and the broader community. In the next few slides, I'm going to speak to the core public health work that APH was able to maintain, and that work is mostly aligned in the prevention and harm reduction pillars. So under the prevention pillar, our goal is to prevent the initiation of substance use or to prevent problematic substance use. So prior to the pandemic, this area of work was a big focus for our community wellness team. And when able to, we plan to resume this really important work with our community partners to highlight the importance of prevention, especially among children, youth, and young adults. We can do this by promoting healthy coping strategies, increasing resiliency, and increasing awareness of the harms that are associated with substance use. Next slide, please. So although treatment, again, is not a main focus for public health work, we do participate in ongoing work with community partners to identify needs, gaps in service, and advocate for related policies, programs, or services that we might be missing in Algoma. And some of these goals include informing and supporting the reorienting of health services to meet population needs. So for example, understanding how stigma can influence the care and treatment for those who use substances. Reducing this stigma and discrimination related to substance use disorder can really help open up the doors for a lot of people to access services that they might not have previously. Another goal is contributing to the planning of and referral to treatment and other services to meet population needs. And APH has and will continue to advocate for increased treatment services in the Algoma region. Next slide, please. So now looking at harm reduction. Harm reduction is a large part of public health's role within substance use and injury prevention. So a good example of harm reduction not related to substance use, wearing sunscreen, wearing seatbelts, wearing helmets. These are all examples of harm reduction efforts that we would promote to prevent injury. Related to substance use, harm reduction provides strategies and ideas to minimize the harmful consequences and health risks associated with drug use. So harm reduction really respects the rights of an individual to choose and addresses the inequities of health and well-being in their community. Harm reduction service providers have a unique role in promoting the health and well-being of people who use drugs. Engagement with harm reduction services has consistently been associated with lower risk behaviors and better health outcomes overall. Evidence shows that harm reduction is a vital part of this comprehensive, compassionate, and collaborative public health approach to substance use and addiction. Harm reduction is proven to reduce risks, improve health, and connect people with other key health and social services. Next slide, please. So we're going to look at a few examples of the type of harm reduction that we are focusing on at Algoma Public Health. So first being the Ontario Naloxone program. So currently we are working with at least 16 agencies, I think there's a few more now, or programs to improve access to naloxone across the Algoma district. And over the last year, we've continued to onboard 8 new agencies into this program. And what that means is public health acts as a hub for naloxone distribution. So eligible community agencies can reach out and they can begin an onboarding process with Algoma Public Health. And if they qualify, we would then provide naloxone to them to provide to any clients that they might have. We also offer consultations for any agencies and organizations who don't meet eligibility requirements to dispense naloxone through the Ontario Naloxone program. And as Amanda said, over the last year, there's been an increase in kit distribution by pharmacies, Algoma Public Health, and our community partners. So another example is our needle exchange program. And we do offer needle exchange services in multiple locations throughout Algoma. We have 6 Sharps disposal kiosks in Sault Ste. Marie, 1 in Blind River, and 1 in Elliott Lake. And during the pandemic cohort, there was an increase in clients accessing needle exchange services and an increase in the number of supplies distributed. And during that cohort too, we really had to modify how we were doing these needle exchange services and harm reduction supply delivery. Hours were modified, but we also had agencies reach out and ask if they could distribute harm reduction supplies, so that that ball got rolling too, and we are working with a lot of agencies now. Next slide, please. So we also do a lot of community collaboration and collaborating with our community partners, as I just said, to dispense the harm reduction supplies. So currently we're providing harm reduction supplies to more than 6 agencies or programs to increase access to safer drug use supplies in naloxone. And again, this work has really ramped up over the last, I would say 6 months or so. One example of collaboration is that the community wellness bus that is through Superior Hospital and CMHA, we ensure that they have harm reduction supplies and a good supply of naloxone to dispense when they're out doing their community outreach. APH is also working with several community partners to ensure that services and programs for people who use drugs remain a priority, both during and post-pandemic. And then looking at surveillance quickly, our surveillance priority aligns well under the harm reduction pillar, as it helps inform priorities for our work moving forward. We continue to collect, analyze, and interpret data regarding opioid-related harms and respond accordingly. And as Amanda said, we distribute monthly opioid surveillance bulletins to our community partners, and we notify the community of any alarming drug trends and or increasing rates of opioid-related harms. So reducing stigma is a big focus for us and something that I feel very passionate about. Stigma is a significant barrier to wellness and good health, not just related to substance use, but stigma and discrimination with mental health. Any other illnesses can really put up a wall for someone that's going through their addiction, mental illness, anything like that. It's often the number one thing that prevents them from going to seek help because they're afraid of how they will be treated. So our goal is to shift language to more accurately reflect that substance use disorder is a health condition and not a moral failing. It's not someone's choice. It is a diagnosable, treatable medical condition, and we really want to shift that language. So at the bottom of the screen in the red and the green, you can see words to avoid when speaking about substance use and words to choose instead. So one example, instead of you saying addict, we will say a person who uses drugs. And we continue to promote this anti-stigma messaging on all of our social media platforms. Moving forward, we really want to restore and rebuild authentic community relationships. And this happens from inside the system, but more importantly, it needs to involve people from outside the system. So people with lived experience who bring a different perspective and a commitment to the issues that are being addressed. For an example, we have peer workers that now work with us at Needle Exchange. So these are people that have lived experience with substance use. And those peer workers also staff the community wellness bus that we discussed and a community hub that allows people to drop in and get connected with services, stay warm, have something to eat, have a coffee, etc. There's opportunity to meaningfully work with people with lived or living experience to carefully look at their needs and prioritize interventions accordingly. APH continues to work with our community partners under each pillar and people with lived and living experience, the drug strategy, and our municipalities through community safety and well-being planning. There's also ongoing population health assessment, surveillance, and information sharing. And this will always be a public health mandate. Surveillance allows us to share information internally and externally to inform priorities for work. And we also want to leverage opportunities with community partners to assess inequities, system level challenges, and provide recommendations or opportunities for positive changes. No single individual approach or organization can effectively address this crisis alone. Algoma Public Health sought opportunities to leverage experiences, resources, and partnerships to frame recommendations to reduce the opioid-related harms in our communities, and we're doing this through a Algoma-wide situational assessment. And the complexity of the opioid crisis reflects the need for a broader and more integrated approach that includes prevention and education, harm reduction, treatment and recovery, and enforcement interventions. And community engagement and participation is key to moving forward with positive changes. And lastly, we continue to collaborate with the Northern Health Units to explore innovative approaches and to share collective knowledge. So we want to collectively use our voices to advocate and to support the reduction in harms associated with the opioid epidemic, especially in the North, prevent opioid use and stigma, and to ultimately save lives. And all of the goals mentioned will require ongoing collaboration with people who use drugs, service providers, researchers, etc., to ensure that they're a safe, equitable, and effective approach to ending this crisis. Thank you.
And thank you, Christy, Allison, and Amanda. I would encourage people to go to Algoma Public Health's website. There's a wealth of information, and Algoma Public Health has been incredibly busy since the beginning of the pandemic, and you certainly brought all of us more in line with what's understanding and going on with the opioid crisis. Thank you so much for coming. Graham Lowry, President and CEO of North Shore Power, and Chris Astles, Chair, are here to provide you with an update on what has transpired since their last presentation in 2019. And believe me, a lot has transpired. Welcome, Graham and Chris. I think Graham's just getting ready to put his microphone on.
There we go. All right. Okay. Now, how do I get back to the page that says share screen?
Bottom of your screen, where it says share screen.
Yeah.
If you bring your mouse down to the bottom, you should find it.
Yeah.
And if you have any challenges, Pam's in the background that can help, and she can help.
Here we go. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, so good evening, everyone. And Mayor Hagman, all the viewers and all the co-presenters. Sorry for my momentary technical difficulties. The presentations have been very interesting so far. I learned a tremendous amount from that Algoma Public Health Unit presentation. Very interesting. So as I said, I'm Graham Lowry, and as Sally introduced me, I operate North Shore Power Group, and I welcome you to today's stakeholder update. 2021 was a heck of a year for us, and it is my distinct pleasure to report to you on it. We had the second best financial results in the history of our company in both our power generation and in our power equipment leasing business units. And we had the best results ever in our lending division. I'm sure that most of you have noticed the 200 acres of solar panels at the industrial park, which surround our head office on the eastern edge of town. But North Shore Power Group is more than that. And I'd like to take a moment to explain the scope of our operations. Obviously, this is a map of Ontario. And what I've done is I've put our projects where they're located across the province and summarized them. Since 2011, we've built a portfolio of 124 projects across the province. From Ottawa in the east to Rainy River in the west, to Sudbury, Manitoulin, and Blind River in the north, and London, Waterloo in the south. We look after all the projects in Blind River and Sudbury, and then we have, sub-operators in at the other locations. So we've grown a pretty big business, and we were really busy from 2011 until 2018 under construction with all these projects and working with partners. This slide gives you an idea of how I think of our business being organized. Of course, any business, a lot happens every day in different parts of our company. But our first business unit is what I call our solar generation business unit. And that's where we typically lease a piece of property from a landowner, and there's a project on it, a solar project. And the power contract is in North Shore Power Group. So we are selling the power to Hydro One. So in that division, we have 3.4 megawatts of projects, 49 owned projects, and then there's the 5 projects at the industrial park that you see out here, and that's 2.5 megawatts. And then we have a project on the roof of the hospital, which is 400 kilowatts. Our second business is solar equipment leasing, and this is familiar to any local who has one of our projects on their property, where the homeowner has the power contract, and we lease them the equipment in order to manufacture the electricity and sell it to Hydro One. So in that division, we have about 1 megawatt of projects. Our third business unit is renewable energy lending, and I'm going to talk about that more in a moment, but we have one single large loan to Omni Conversion Technologies. Our fourth business unit was construction services and EPC, which stands for engineering, procurement, and construction. We built 3 projects for Vigor Clean Tech for a total capacity of 1.5 megawatts. We completed one for Saturn Power of 500 kilowatts. And we were the civil and mechanical sub on the SS5 limited partnership projects at the industrial park and at the hospital. So they totaled 2.9 megawatts. We're not actively building anything at the moment for the simple reason that Hydro and the government of Ontario isn't signing new contracts for power at the moment, although that may change in the near future with some of the big changes coming in our nuclear generation base. Some of our large stations are too old to keep running. So there are some big changes on the horizon in terms of new opportunities in private power coming. Our fifth business unit is very busy now. After we built these projects, they need to be looked after. So we provide operating and maintenance services on our 72 projects where we lease the equipment, on our 55 projects where we own it. And we also have contracts to look after all the big projects here at the industrial park and the trackers that you see around our head office when you drive down Highway 17. And we also look after the 3 water power plants on the Blind River. There's 2 upstream, one at Chiblo, one at Canoe Lake, which we call the Scarf plant, and then there's the one in town. And that's an important function in terms of, first of all, making energy, but equally important, those dams protect the town of Blind River in terms of watershed management. So now I'd like to turn to one of the more exciting topics of 2021. And that would be an update on our renewable energy lending. So in 2000 and I think it was around 2012, we didn't invest, we actually did a sale leaseback transaction with Plasco Conversion Technologies. And this year they changed their name on January 1st to Omni Conversion Technologies. And they chose the name Omni because they can take indiscriminate municipal waste and turn it into energetic gas and inert slag. So the Omni refers to the fact that you can put almost anything into their machine. So during early 2021, we received all our overdue interest. They were behind about a year on the interest they owed us, and we had given them some time to pay us, but they came good for all of it, including the penalties. And the most exciting news, in April of 2021, they finally sold their first commercial unit to the Larson Lamb Climate Change Foundation. The transaction was for US $35 million. They've already received, I think, something like 16 million on that contract. The units plan to be installed into a plant being built in California. And the Larson Lamb Climate Change Foundation is sponsored by San Francisco-based billionaires Chris Larson and Lina Lamb. There's lots of information about them on the internet, but they're very serious about fighting climate change. And I think if you lived in California, you'd be more worried about it than we are where we live, because some of the natural disasters have been devastating. On December 17th, Omni and its secured creditors, which is us and Canadian Water Projects, which is a company based in Zurich, Switzerland, entered into a debt restructuring agreement. If Omni meets its commitments under this agreement, then the combined repayments of capital and interest income to North Shore Power Group, together with the income from NSPG's other business operations, we do make money in our core business, would be sufficient to completely repay our loan from the town, and thus for the town to completely repay CMHC. So that's a big if. I make no bones about it, but that is their commitment, is to pay us out on our investment. And that brings us to an important question, and that is, how much do we still owe? And the answer is often misunderstood. And I've heard it mistakenly reported many different ways. So let's clarify. NSPG borrowed $49.5 million from the town of Blind River, which was the money the town got from CMHC. Approximately $5 million was used to pay interest on the CMHC loan while we were pre-revenue. Why were we pre-revenue? Well, we were building our projects and our operations portfolio, and thus our future revenue base. In other words, the money got advanced as a lump sum, and then we had to put it to work. At March 1st, 2022, in a couple weeks, after NSPG makes our next installment on our base loan to the town, which, by the way, we made today 2 weeks in advance, the principal balance outstanding will be down to $12,374,632. At March 1st, 2022, the same date, the balloon payment will now mature at $17,678,893 in 2037. So that money's not due for approximately 15 years. This is reduced from $23,406,750 due to our recent prepayment to the town, which was the subject of a press release earlier. Because the balloon payment bears 0% interest, our auditors, KPMG, use the effective interest rate method to calculate its present value. This present value of the balloon payment principal balance outstanding at March 1st, 2022 will be $9,774,085. In other words, that much money grows to the 17 million and change over the 15 years. Therefore, the total remaining balance owed by NSPG to the town will be down to a total of $22,148,716. It is now actually from an original balance of $49.5 million, which is a reduction of 55%. So that's what we've accomplished so far, and that's what our projects and our investments have done. We've got our loan down to less than half of what we started at. And So our loan to Omni Conversion Technologies has earned us significant revenues to date. And our prospects of further recoveries have significantly improved. During the past year, a massive change in market sentiment towards the carbon neutral economy has occurred. Pursuit of this objective has renewed interest in Omni's technology, and the company has gathered a group of powerful financial sponsors and strategic partners. I will be the first to say that we have not yet reached safe harbor, but we have charted our course, we have weathered the storms, and we have made excellent progress. Everyone at our power company will continue to serve NSPG and pursue the continued success and profitability of our enterprise. Thank you, Sally.
And thank you, Graham. I would like to acknowledge Katie Scott, our CAO, who did all the leasing with CMHC in order to make the prompt payments on our loan and substantially knock down the balloon payment. We are a great team, North Shore Power Group, the town of Blind River. We will continue to work together in the interest of all the residents of Blind River. And Graham, thank you so much for your presentation.
I'm going to put the presentation up for Chris now, if I may.
You may.
One second here, slideshow. Sally, can you see the chairman's report?
We can. Yes, thank you.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. My name is Chris Ostels. I'm the chair of North Shore Power Group. Hang on a sec. And it's my pleasure to add to the remarks from our CEO. Blind River has a unique, powerful advantage that I sometimes wonder if people fully appreciate, especially if we compare ourselves to other small communities in Northern Ontario. Our foundation in the energy business is enviable. These companies in our community are not the boom and bust tragedy of some of the Northern Ontario communities. Our town is host to the world's largest uranium refinery, and we own a strong renewable energy company. Both enterprises pump money into our community through the spending, the wages, the investments. It's a huge benefit for the company or for the community. And both companies are contributing to the power supply that feeds Ontario. It would be safe to say that approximately 40% of Ontario's electrical consumption is directly linked to the small town of Blind River. And as much as I'd like to sit here and talk about Cameco after a lengthy career there, I am here to talk about North Shore Power Group. So here are some financial facts. North Shore Power pays $1.115 million per year to the town to cover the entire amount of the town's annual payment to CMHC. It pays an average of $120,000 per year in project sharing to the town on projects where the town has zero investment, and a further $74,000 per year in the rental of the office building. As well, it pays an average of $40,000 per year in project sharing to local residents, where they also have zero investment. So it's close to $250,000 a year being contributed back to the community. Recently, we have made a $4 million prepayment to the town to enable it to reduce its final payment to CMHC in 2037 by $5.727 million. So it's a significant payment. This prepayment was a significant milestone in our investment recovery efforts, which began when North Shore Power Group and Canadian Water Projects rescued Plasco from insolvency in 2015 with its intellectual property intact and sold it back to its founder with our secured debit credit or debt intact. It's worthy of note that since 2015, when it appeared that we had lost our entire investment, we have recovered interest of $5.624 million and principal of almost $600,000. And while we are not completely out of the woods yet, we are definitely making excellent progress. Having served as chair of North Shore Power Group for 7 years, I want to join everyone at our company in thanking the current and former town councils, the North Shore Power Group of directors for their steadfast support over the past 11 years. Some of these friends are now gone, but they are not forgotten. Our move into renewable energy in 2010 was ahead of the curve, as our planet now comes to grip with the dangers of climate change and how we must change the way we live. We can and should all be proud of what this town and North Shore Power Group have accomplished and the resiliency we have shown the world. So thank you, Sally.
And thank you, Chris. I'd also like to recognize Councillor Jennifer Posterero and Deputy Mayor Paula Summers and myself, who sit along with Chris on the board of directors for North Shore Power Group. And I would encourage the public to go to North Shore Power Group's website. You can see all the financials as well as the board meetings and be enlightened by some of the great things that North Shore Power Group is doing. Thank you, Graham and Chris. Well, Ken Raymond is no surprising person in the town of Blind River, but as Director of Protective Services and Fire Chief, he wears a few hats in his role. Tonight, Ken will be sharing information on emergency management and what we all have to do to protect ourselves. Welcome, Ken.
Just have to find all the right buttons here.
You got it right on the left of your screen from the beginning.
Yeah, I'm looking for the full screen.
Yep, that will show it.
Oop, wrong way.
If you take your cursor over to from the beginning, your full screen will come up.
There we go. I'm glad someone knows what to do on these things. Thank you for the help, Mayor Hagman.
No problem.
All right, so tonight's presentation is going to be on our 72-hour preparedness, just to make sure that everybody's families are ready to go for our next emergency. So we're going to learn how you can prepare for emergencies by making an emergency plan and a kit. So you should be prepared to take care of yourself and your family for a minimum of 72 hours. If a disaster happens in your community, it may take emergency workers some time to get to you as they help those in desperate need. Learn a few simple steps today and help your family to be prepared, not scared. Soon as an emergency begins, emergency services are going to be actually working on the main emergency and will not have time to go to each person to give them the help they may need. So you need to be prepared to take care of yourself for 72 hours. Although the consequences of various disasters can be similar, knowing the risks in your region can help you prepare. Across Canada, we face a number of hazards, from earthquakes in British Columbia to blizzards in Nunavut and tornadoes in Ontario. In addition to natural disasters, there are other types of risks such as power outages and industrial or transportation accidents. We need to be prepared for all types of emergencies. So some of the natural events we could have are floods, earthquakes. There is a fault in Sudbury, drought and wildfires. We've seen what happened last year, severe storms, including tornadoes, We came close to having a few here this year with the little microbursts we had. Severe winter weather and blizzards and ice storms. Extreme temperatures, heat waves, or cold snaps, which we're getting for the last few days. Tomorrow is going to be a heat wave, and then we'll be right back to the cold weather again. And infectious disease outbreaks. Some of the human-caused emergencies we could have, transport accidents, rail, road, and air, blackouts, hazardous material spills or fumes, explosions and fires, industrial accidents, deliberate acts like arsons or terrorism. So some of the main ones that we could have here in Blind River: transportation accidents involving dangerous goods and their passengers. Approximately 550,000 vehicles drive through our town yearly. That's the count that we have on our signs that we had up for last year. Severe summer storms, train derailments, severe winter storms with ice, freezing rain, and snow, human health emergencies, and tornadoes. So you need to make a plan. Every household needs a plan. A plan will help you with your family. You and your family know what to do in case of an emergency. Your family may not be together when an emergency happens. Plan how to meet or contact one another. Talk about what you would do in a different situation. So one of the main things is having a household plan and escape route. This is not only for emergencies, this is also for, you should have a fire plan in your home on how you're going to evacuate. So plan emergency exits from each room of your home. Make sure everyone in your home knows how to safely exit your home. Identify any escape route from your neighborhood in case you need to leave in a hurry. So you'll want to try and have, as you can see from the map, at least 2 ways out of every room if you can, which would be using either the doorway or a window. So you also want to have a meeting place. So you want to choose a safe place where everyone should meet if they have to leave the house in an emergency. The meeting place should be on the same side of the street as your home, so you won't have to cross the street into traffic or in front of emergency vehicles. Also identify a place to meet if you cannot go home or need to evacuate. So if you can't go to your home, you may say we're going to meet at a neighbor's house, grandparents' house, parents' houses. You want to make sure you have a different area to go to if you can't go back to your own home. So your children in emergencies. Parents should know the emergency plan of their children's school. Know what kind of authorization is needed by the school to release children to someone other than the parent, such as a relative, neighbor, or babysitter. They may have a way that you can have a list of people that can pick up your children if there's an emergency. Make sure your school has updated contact information for your parents and other caregivers. Carry a list of important phone numbers in their school bag or program them into their cell phone. So you want to make sure that they're prepared in case they can't come back to their house. And if they have all of the cell numbers of all the different relatives they can call, it's a good place to have it in their backpacks. The big one is your pets. If there's a shelter open, you got to remember that pets are not allowed in emergency shelters and some hotels. The reason for that are people may have allergies that are staying in that emergency shelter. That's why you cannot bring animals in. Plan to take your pets with you to a family or friends, or identify a pet-friendly hotel or boarding kennel in advance. Put pet food and extra water in your emergency kit. Have a pet carrier for each pet. So people with special needs, we want to establish a support network of friends and family, healthcare providers, co-workers, and neighbors who understand your special needs. Have copies of your medical history, prescriptions, insurance. Talk to your doctor about having a grab and go bag ready with a 2-week supply of medication. Remember, if you're going to have a 2-week supply of medication, after a few months, you should be swapping it out so that your medication isn't staying in there for 2 or 3 years, and then it's not going to be any good for you anyways. So some neighborhoods might want to have a safety plan. Work with your neighbors to make sure everyone is taken care of in your neighborhood. Because you got to remember that we may not be able to get to your neighborhood, and you'll want to get together to help each other. Identify people who might need extra help in an emergency. Help them prepare an emergency kit, survival kit, and arrange to check on that person in an emergency. Again, if the power's out, the heat's out, you want to check on your neighbors to see if they need anything and if everybody's all right, especially if they're at a later age in life. You may be able to bring them to your home if that's part of your plan. So ensure exterior 911 municipal address numbers are visible for emergency responders. So I want to take a second here. What I would like you to do is the next time you're driving into your driveway or driving up to your home, see if you can actually see your address from the road. If you can't see it, we can't see it. We don't know where you live. We don't know exactly who lives in which home. We need to be able to see your address. So if you can't see it from the home or from the road, make sure you make it either larger or put one at the road that we can see. That's the main problem we have in the middle of the night, is finding the numbers on homes. So have your emergency numbers listed near the phone. Have working smoke alarm on every floor and outside of each sleeping area. That is actually the law. A carbon monoxide alarm outside each sleeping area. Again, part of the law. An ABC rated fire extinguisher. And if you have a fire extinguisher, make sure everybody knows how to use it. So these are some of the things you can put in your plan for your safe home checklist to know where everything is. So know where your water valve is, your electrical box and gas shutoff valve, from where they are and how to shut them off. Your floor drain, ensure to keep it clear. Emergency info card on fridge with important phone numbers of family, neighbors, doctors, vet, dentists, childcare providers, utility companies, etc. I know we all have these plans put into our cell phones, but if a neighbor comes in, they don't know what your doctor's number is or who your doctor is. So if you have it on the list, they'll know who to call. So you're going to want to make a kit. In an emergency, you will need to have some basic supplies. You may need to get by without power or tap water. You should be prepared to be self-sufficient for at least 72 hours. Make sure your kit is easy to carry. Keep it in a backpack, duffel bag, or suitcase with wheels in an easy to reach place such as your front hall closet. Make sure everyone in the house knows where to find the emergency kit. So some of the contents that you're going to want in there is water, at least 2 liters of water per person per day. Include small bottles that can be carried easily in case of an evacuation order. Food that won't spoil, such as canned food, energy bars, and dried foods. Remember to replace the food and water once a year. A manual can opener, because if the power is out, all of our electronics aren't going to work, so we're not going to be able to open up that can. And a first aid kit, and get trained in first aid and CPR. Some other items, flashlights, batteries, and a lantern. Candles and matches or lighter. Make sure an adult is present before using lighters and candles. Remember to place candles in sturdy containers and to extinguish all flames before leaving the room. Go out, blow out. Don't put them in the window. Don't put them near curtains. Don't put them on anything that's flammable. Battery powered or wind up radio. Yes, we're still saying a radio because you'll still get the information, hopefully on the CBC that you can get information, and we may be able to get out anything that we have to get out to you that way. So your special items such as prescription medications, infant formula, and equipment for people with disabilities. Some cash in smaller bills such as $10 bills in case banks are closed and the ATMs are not working. Extra keys for your car and house. You'll want that in the kit so that when you leave the house, you have all the keys you need. You're not running around looking for keys when you have to evacuate. A copy of your home emergency plan including contact information. So some additional kit supplies you'll want: change of clothing and footwear for each household member. This would be a separate kit that you want to have because when you put the food and all of your emergency stuff together, you don't want to make it so large that it's too heavy to carry. So you could have a second one for the clothing and footwear, sleeping bag or a warm blanket for each household member, toilet paper and personal care supplies, a whistle, and garbage bags. The reason you want a whistle is that if you do get into an emergency, you can blow the whistle and it's something that your neighbors or emergency workers will hear. There could be a lot of people shouting, talking, but a whistle will get everybody's attention. That's why you'd like to have that in your kit. Some safety gloves, some basic tools, hammers, pliers, wrench, screwdrivers, nails, pocket multi-tool. This part of the kit you could have in your vehicle and leave it in your vehicle. Small fuel-driven stove and extra fuel for cooking outdoors. Do not cook or heat indoors and follow the directions and store properly. So the reason you don't want to cook inside is you'll have a carbon monoxide buildup in the home. So nothing with fuel in the home to heat or cook with. And make a basic emergency kit for your vehicle too. How many times have we been stopped on the highway because there's an accident for 2 or 3 hours, or the roads are closed for snowstorms? So you want to have something in your kit, in your vehicle also. So you should be preparing now. Don't wait for an emergency to happen. There are simple things you can do to prepare yourself and your family. So you can watch this presentation. I'm sure it's going to be on again, as the mayor had said this at the beginning. Together with members of your household, work as a family to make a plan and prepare your kit. On this date every year, review your contact information, practice your emergency evacuation plan, and restock your contacts of your kit. So, are you ready? Use this time at home to help your family be prepared, not scared. So one of the things that when you're making this plan with your children, you want to make it as fun as you can and not scare them. So you may make it into something where, okay, we're going to make our kit, and each child is going to go and pick up one of their favorite cans of food that they're going to put in the kit so it's ready to go. Or they're going to have to find a pair of socks, make it into some kind of game that when you're making the kit, they're not worried that, okay, we're doing this because something bad is going to happen. Try and steer them away from that and make it into some fun time if you can for them. And if you need some more information, these websites are available. So you can get stuff from the Weather Network, of course. Emergency Management Ontario has a lot of information. You can print off the lists that you need for your 72-hour kit. And they also have fillable forms. So there's quite a bit of information on there. Ontario.ca, and again, Algoma Public Health has a lot of information. Thank you for watching.
And thank you, Ken. Sounds like we all have a lot of homework to do. So we'll be making sure that our kits are in good shape. Thank you. Our next presenter is Sue Dent, and she is the town's Director of Finance. Sue works diligently to ensure that budgets passed by council are spent according to plan with all of our operations. She also ensures that transfer payments and grants that the CAO, directors, and herself have applied for are expensed to the right department. It's a complicated process, but Sue is here tonight to make it sound easy. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you, Mayor Hagman. So for those of you who have not been or were unable to attend the public meeting that we had in January, I'm just going to give you a brief overview of our 2022 budget. So we did, the budget committee did start meeting back in September to put the 2022 budget together. We were set a target of a 2.5% increase to the tax rate, and we were able to meet that target with this budget, and it was approved by council just last Monday night. So the 2022 budget is now official. And that 2.5% works out to just under $46 per $100,000 of assessment. So that is the increase that you will be looking to see on your final tax bills when they come out in the summer. The 2022 capital budget. So our total capital budget for this year is just about $3.9 million. Approximately 1/3 of that, or $1.3 million, is funded from the tax levy. And the balance of that is funded from various grants, donations, and reserves. You'll notice a CCBF there at 6.4%. That is the old federal gas tax. They have rebranded themselves, and it is now called the Canada Community Building Fund. But that is our federal gas tax allocation. We use that for our road resurfacing program. We also be getting money, our formula funding from OCIF, and the various other sources of revenues there for our capital projects. This is where we're going to spend that capital, those capital dollars this year. A little skewed on the protective services this year. We are, as we will see in the following slide, purchasing a new fire truck, and that is a significant amount of dollars. But $1.2 million will be for that new aerial fire truck. This is not our truck. We don't have it yet. It is being built, but this is what it will look like. The other piece in the protective services is a new pedestrian crossover. We are working on putting up some new crosswalks. If you've been by WC Eckett, you will see what those new crosswalks will look like. So we will be putting one of those in various locations over the next number of years. Within the administration capital project, we are going to begin planning for a new town hall. One thing that became very evident during this COVID situation is the need for proper air circulation. The current building does not meet those requirements at all. The other thing that has come to light is that we cannot make this facility accessible. There just is not the space to make the entranceways accessible, to make the washrooms accessible. So in order to be an accessible town hall, we will need to build a new facility. So we're going to begin planning for that. We have some ongoing projects that we've been putting money towards every year, including building demolition and our ongoing computer replacement programs. We will be replacing our server in town hall, and we're also looking at a new communications tower. Public Works. We have an annual pre-engineering program, and what that does is that allows us to get projects shovel ready. So when funding opportunities arise, we have projects that are ready to apply for any grants that come up. So we do have some pre-engineering money set aside. And this year we will also be purchasing a new sweeper. I say new sweeper, but it's a new to us sweeper. It is not a brand new sweeper. This is our old one that we are replacing. We have purchased the new replacement sweeper, and we're just waiting for it to be delivered. Within the water and wastewater capital, some ongoing roof replacements. We do need to do some work to the steps at the water treatment plant. There is a tripping hazard there. It has been temporarily repaired, but we need to repair it permanently. Some new equipment in terms of an actuator. We are working with our engineers to do some upgrades, much needed upgrades at the sewage treatment plant. So we do have money set aside for those projects still to be determined. And we are also putting money aside to replace the filter media at the water treatment plant. The museum and art gallery have, as you are aware, taken over the Marine Park building down by the marina. And that building needs some attention, as was brought to light in the TELUC reports. They did a complete review of all of our buildings and facilities and identified the things that we needed to repair and replace. At this particular facility, we're looking at roof and windows. And the museum continues to replace their storage racks. Over at the arena, again, identified in the TELUC reports, replace some windows and some lighting. And we know that we are going to have to do something with the roof of this facility in the not too distant future. So we need to start planning for that. It is going to be a large dollar item. So we are starting this year with a roof replacement reserve so that when the time comes, we will have the funds to repair and or replace the roof as required. Out at the cemetery, we are continuing with the upgrades to this facility. These are the new signs that went up this past year. We continue with our niche expansion, some additional repairs to the building at the cemetery, and a final phase of fencing, and then this area will be completely redone. For the library building, one of the issues that has been identified is windows need to be replaced at this facility. So we are looking to start to do that in 2022. And also some much needed repairs to the docks at Matinenda Landing. In our parks and playgrounds areas, we continue to do some upgrades and much needed repairs. So there's some additional fencing down at Town Park. Ongoing project in the Venturi Street Ball Diamond. We'll be looking at doing some work with the tennis courts, upgrading some playground equipment, and starting to do some work at Shervon Park this year in 2022. We'll be doing some fencing and looking at other equipment and other requirements in the next 2 years. Also, the Blind River Dam requires some repairs to the trash racks. The dam is managed for us by North Shore Power Group, so they will be looking after these repairs for us. And the senior center needs some love and attention, as well as was brought out in the TELUC report. So in the 2022 budget is money for new doors with the key fob access and much needed roof repairs. There is a leak there. New ramp, and there's some insulation issues that we need to deal with in the ceiling. And then our ongoing roads and sidewalk programs. We have our annual road resurfacing, our surface treatment program, road repairs, and sidewalk replacements. Those are all annual ongoing programs that we continue with for 2022. Within the operating budget, no surprise here, the largest portion of our operating revenues do come from taxation. And then the various other smaller pieces, our OMPF funding is the next biggest piece. And various fines and rents and licensing. A lot of numbers on this page, but just and not a lot of changes from year over year as far as the breakdown, but these are all the areas where your tax dollars go to support. Within that are some things that the town does not have control over. These are various association or partners that we are required to fund. Our Algoma Public Health Levy is increasing by 10% in 2022. We are estimating that the ADSIB levy will also be increasing by 10%. Over the last few years and continuing into 2022, the ROPP billing is decreasing by approximately 1%. We're also not expecting any increase to our MPAC levy. That's our Municipal Property Assessment Corporation contribution. And then we're also looking at various other contractor increases to do with landfill, garbage collection, recycling, our dam operations, and our handy transit operations. So after we look at these contributions, what that leaves us with is approximately $6.3 million for the rest of our municipal operations. Just a brief history here, real quick, just so you can see what the history has been. The Aragoma Public Health Levy has been up and down since 2012. And our ADSAB levy, we are estimating, as I said, a 10% increase for 2022. Our OMPF, that's our Ontario Municipal Partnership Funding, is staying the same for 2021, $2.6 million. Also in the operating budget are our regular annual transfers to our landfill reserve, our equipment reserve, and our facilities reserve. We did see a slight increase in our physician recruitment for a contribution for 2022, just $500. That's not significant. We've also included money in the operating budget for the municipal election that will be happening in the fall. We continue to see significant increases in insurance rates. And although we are planning to go to RFP for our insurance in 2022, I'm not anticipating any significant decreases in the insurance rates, but we'll see what happens. And then our ongoing CIP program, our Community Improvement Plan program. So we have $20,000 set aside for those grants for 2022. Within the protective services budget, you saw the picture of our new aerial truck that we are getting this year. We also got a new truck in 2021. And so the fire budget does contain repayments for those two trucks. And within our building and planning services, Tulloch Engineering does a lot of the building and planning work for us. We're paying those engineering costs. And we will also be updating our orthophotography for our CGIS system. So we'll get some updated actual graphic pictures of the town of Blind River that we will be able to use in our system. Within the Public Works operating budget, we will be doing a new sidewalk assessment so we can plan which sections of sidewalks need to be repaired and replaced and when that needs to be done. We do have our annual transfer to the bridge reserve for a future project at for the Dawsey Culvert. We will be doing some significant ditching work, and 2022, of course, is our Household Hazardous Waste Day year, so that will be happening. Stay tuned for dates on that. The library requested a 2.5% increase this year to the municipal contribution to the library's budget. So that contribution now sits at $150,565 of the library's total $192,000 budget. Water and wastewater. Although these operations have no impact on the tax levy, I have included a little bit of information here. The operating costs for both of these services are 100% funded by the users of the water and wastewater services in town. In 2021, we were required to update our water and wastewater financial plan. That was presented to and adopted by council in December. And this set out the required increases to meet the future demands for both capital and operating for 2022 and beyond. As we talked about at the council meeting or at the budget meeting, we were talking about user fees. This is a plan that is a living document, as all plans should be, and we will continue to revisit and update the financial portion of this to ensure that any changes are reflected in the plan. If we find operational savings or additional capital requirements, they get built into the plan so that we are well positioned to look after those needs going forward. And this was not a presentation that was to include anything about the user fees, but I did want to just point out that we will be seeing an increase in the user fees for water and wastewater. The financial plan did identify an average annual increase of 9.2%. And just So you know what that looks like to the average residential user, it's about 24 cents a day. So that will ensure that we can continue to operate the water and the wastewater services and provide those to the residents of Blind River. And that is all I had to say about that this evening.
Thank you, Sue. As I've said before, you are bean counter extraordinaire. Thank you for your presentation. And back with us for a final presentation is our Director of Facilities and Community Services, Karen Bittner. Welcome back, Karen.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone, for sticking around. I won't keep you very much longer. I know it's getting late on a Tuesday, but I'd like to recap because it seems like March 15th, 2020 was yesterday. And the last 2 years have been a terrible dream, but we need to talk about it. And then we're going to celebrate the achievements of our team over the last 2 years and drive home that we did not give up on you, the resident. So just to recap, our administration, our council, and our direct service staff put our heads together unanimously and focused on recovery. Sunday, March 15th, we were in town hall updating our pandemic plan. And then we drove around town attaching closure notices to our facilities. It was a heartbreaking day. We knew what was coming. We had no idea what it was going to evolve into, but we knew it was going to be ugly. On March 16th, we began working on sustainable infrastructure projects that were going to bring people here, create jobs, and then create opportunities that would allow people to stay and spend when we got to the home stretch of the pandemic. We worked with council, and council graciously approved an 8-year community improvement program strategy. We can control what we can control. We can update our municipal infrastructure, but we had to create tools that would allow our local merchants to be able to access funding at their own pace and give them the autonomy to be able to work with what was available to them and when they were mentally able to want to be able to pursue some updates for their buildings. So I'm very proud of our response in that we did not wait to be hand-delivered solutions. We attacked and we took a really good look at where Blind River could improve so we could be ready for people when they safely could return to our municipality. I'm just going to play this quick show and then we're going to keep talking about the additional benefits that our work is going to bring to the province of Ontario. And can you see my screen, Mayor Hagman?
Not yet.
Okay.
You're there, Karen.
Wonderful. Okay. So help me. PowerPoint is going to be the thing. All right, here we go. So I hope that was exciting to watch, because it was a lot of work. We have an incredible team that came together. A very, I will say, adaptive, easy to work with council over the last 2 years. We had to make a lot of adjustments to how we met, shared ideas, and came up with solutions. And before I keep going, I do have to share some thanks, because while it's really great for Karen to post a bunch of numbers in a slideshow and claim that it's a one-person show or a one-department show, we're nothing without Mississauga First Nation. The collaboration, the commitment to growth solutions that are going to benefit 2 communities, our commitment to truth and reconciliation. I need to thank the province of Ontario, NOHFC, FedNor, and the government of Canada for funding sustainable projects, focusing on enhancing our spaces to be inclusive tourism drivers that benefit guests and locals alike. Our tourism champions that are there to answer a call or an email at any time, and trust me, they are hounded at any given time. Destination Northern Ontario, Algoma Kinawabi, Great Lakes Waterfront Trust, pardon me, the Trans-Canada Trail, and our local champions, the Blind River Rotary Club, our Chamber of Commerce, ELNOS, our junior sport clubs, our schools, and all of you, the people that sat down, the people that contributed to our strategic plan, our community improvement plan, and those who just step up to volunteer. You give your time, you offer notes of support, you assist in project design, and you're really great for bouncing ideas off. And lastly, the people that choose to call Blind River home. Our silent people that are in the background that are watching things happen, you are valued just as much as the people with the loudest voices. So I thank everybody, especially those that took the time to tune in tonight. I do apologize for my voice. So $2.4 million in grants. It is something to celebrate for a municipality of our size. And Chris in his earlier presentation commented how sometimes we forget how incredible Blind River really is. We achieved $2.4 million of infrastructure enhancements, and combined with the $1.2 million of already budgeted infrastructure dollars that Sue mentioned, we set out our capital plan every year. We took that 1.2 million, and instead of working on projects dollar for dollar, approached funders, secured an additional 2.4 million for a direct investment of $3.6 million. Now, what does that mean for Ontario? It means that we have an estimated total of direct, indirect, and induced economic impact to our region, our province, of $5.7 million. So to some people sitting at home, you're like, big deal. I don't care about anything that's happening outside of Blind River. That's fine. What does that mean for us? $1.2 million is an exorbitant total. What is she talking about? Well, guess what? If we keep going to the province and saying we need help, we complain on social media, where are our MPs? Where are political leadership? Why aren't they giving money to Blind River? We have finally generated the data and the stats to say, listen, we have skin in the game. We are ponying up cash. We're doing everything possible to contribute to this province and its recovery strategy. Help us. We are taking our engineer documents that I talked about, or pardon me, showed you in the first couple of slides. We tasked Tulloch Engineering to give us a plan, give us a strategy. We have over a dozen facility reports. We are resolving decades of facility deficiencies. We're ensuring our services are updated. The right models are in place to make sure they're relevant and they contribute to our overarching goals. Within 2 years, we're going to have 3 facilities off our list completely. For the first time, we're not using a Band-Aid approach to solving our problems. We are correcting them the right way in a sustainable and economical fashion. This is a huge step in the right direction for not only community services, but for our municipality as a whole. It's something we can check off and say, okay, let's move on to the next thing. And then once all the foundation pieces are taken care of, we can start moving on to the more fun stuff. But we have to build a strong foundation, and we have to take care of our critical infrastructure first. So while all of these great projects are happening this summer, I'd like to summarize, because it was grant after grant after grant. Our overarching wonderful projects that are going to be happening, tourism and community recovery. What you're going to see, a completely revitalized downtown waterfront. You are going to have beautiful boardwalks replaced on both sides of the river. We're going to have accessible benches. There's going to be spaces to eat. And on the east side, cleats for people to be able to pull their boats if they arrive by water so they can go shopping downtown. Families can fish and people can wander down from the beautiful pavilion that's behind the Royal Bank and enjoy the waterfront and gaze at the fountain, meditate, eat lunch, do whatever you need to do. The Marine Park, we are going to be replacing every single dock through our grants, as well as addressing all of the facility deficiencies. We're very excited. We're going to continue to enhance the space, and we knew these facility deficiencies at the Marine Park were going to be coming. But now with the museum down there and the museum being busier than ever, we want to make sure that we look our very best. So that site is going to be truly something to be very proud of. The cemetery, finishing the fencing and continuing, the landscaping so we can take pride. We want you to go and visit your family members and feel a great sense of pride and calmness when you're in that area. So we will continue to get that done. We're really excited about our playgrounds, enhancing our spaces, and we're working diligently to find funding so we can replace our pickleball and tennis ball courts. We're ensuring that we have opportunities for our active seniors, because the new senior is not sitting, they are active, want to participate in sports, want to be outside. And if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's we are craving activities and socializing. Isolation has done a lot of damage for people, so we need to create these affordable recreation opportunities that allow people to get out and feel like they are a part of something larger. So again, I need to thank everybody for coming together. Council for making a lot of changes and working quite quickly. A lot of demands at a lot of different meetings, and we had to act fast. I'm really excited for 2022. It's going to be a very tiring year, but stick with us. Share your ideas, and we cannot wait to reload that hopper for 2023. This is the beginning of a brand new Blind River. We are very excited, and I can't thank you enough for putting up with me and my terrible voice this evening. And any questions, of course, you know how to find me. I'm a text or an email away. And if anybody needs me to elaborate on any projects, I'm more than happy to set up time with you. Please take care and have a wonderful and safe long weekend.
Thank you, Karen. And just a couple of things of note to the public. I've worked on a lot of strategic planning plans in my day, and I have to tell you, the plan for the town of Blind River does not get any dust on it. It is utilized each and every day. Right now, we are revisiting the plan and putting in all those enhancements from the trees that Home Hardware was able to procure to us, the signs and everything that has happened in our community. The last 4 years have been incredibly busy, but hang on for the ride. And I also want to applaud Karen. She's going to be representing Blind River in Niagara Falls at a tourism conference and talking about our community improvement grants and how they have come to fruition. So we can be so proud of the Blind River staff. We can be so proud of all of you. We appreciate the volunteers. We know we have community champions, and we wouldn't be able to do it without you. So this concludes tonight's information session. Thank you so much to all our presenters for making this event possible. The next information night will be taking place in July. And go to the town website to subscribe to information at Blind River for all the up-to-date information you might want to know about our town, your town, Blind River. Thanks, everyone, and good night.